This text establishes itself in an environment of raw physical forces, where the landscape provides the primary evidence for the claims that follow. It opens with the specific sequence of 4 Arabic letters: Alif, Lam, Mim, and Ra. While often characterized as symbols of mystery, the text treats them as precise organizational units. These letters act as a preamble that categorizes the high-density data stream of the chapter, functioning like the initial metadata at the start of a digital transmission. The presence of this sequence notifies the reader that the following module requires a complete reconciliation of the unseen laws of the universe with the seen evidence of nature. This sequence demands that the user set aside abstract assumptions and prepare for a strictly logical analysis of the material world. The text proceeds from the premise that the universe is an integrated construct, where physical events and moral consequences operate under the same architecture. This architecture is built on the Sunan Allah, the invariable constants that govern every level of existence without exception. Under these constants, the logic governing invisible moral laws is the same logic that dictates observable physical forces, like gravity or the hydrological cycle. To navigate the text, the viewer must actively map the unseen governing principles onto the concrete physical evidence presented in the environment. Surah Ar-Ra'd operates through the logic of a systems audit, using rigorous physical examples to verify its primary claims. We can identify the specific functions of the 4 letters to see how they build an integrated protocol for reality. Aleph represents the primary source, the hardware of existence. Lam is the transmission, sending down the information. Mim is the manifestation, where abstract laws become concrete matter. Finally, Ra is the empirical observation, verifying the manifest reality against the source. This protocol establishes a strict path. A source creates a transmission, which results in a physical manifestation, which then must be verified through human observation. Surah Ar-Ra'd functions as a laboratory to test this protocol, providing specific physical phenomena as data points for the observer to process. If the source code is valid, the truth it carries must manifest in physical space and remain accessible to empirical verification. The text applies the protocol to the mechanics of gravity and celestial orbits in verse 2. It describes the heavens without pillars as something you can see. This points to the invisible structural forces that hold massive planetary bodies in place. By commanding the reader to observe these invisible pillars, the text activates the Ra parameter, the necessity of visual verification. The sun and moon running their courses for a specified term provides the mean parameter, the manifestation of highly regulated physical laws. These immense, highly regulated forces serve as the empirical evidence required to deduce the presence of an unseen organizing source. Observing invisible gravitational forces holding up physical mass bridges the gap between the manifest world and the laws that govern it. The second stress test moves from gravity to the mathematical complexity of biological diversity. The system identifies its input, watered with one water. This uniform resource represents the transmission channel, the Lam. The resulting output, diverse crops of varying quality growing from the same soil, is the physical manifestation. Identical, uniform inputs generating highly organized and varying outputs is a mathematical indicator of a conscious instruction set rather than random chance. The text explicitly directs the people who reason to observe this input-output asymmetry through the faculty of the Ra. Encountering such extreme biological complexity generated from simple, uniform elements necessitates a calculating source at the beginning of the chain. The final ALMR test in verse 17 uses the laws of thermodynamics and metallurgy as the ultimate parallel for processing information. It details the heating of raw ore to separate pure metal from useless slag, a physical process illustrating the separation of truth from falsehood. This physical purification provides a direct model for how the mind must separate systemic data from corrupted information. The pure metal that remains on the earth represents operational truth, information that sustains structural integrity. The vanishing slag represents falsehood, data that cannot survive the thermodynamic stress test of reality. The text demands that the human intellect process incoming information with the same rigor as a furnace processing raw ore. The smelting furnace is the physical evidence of how truth must be tested, refined, and verified within the observer's own reasoning. We can now evaluate what happens when the human mind fails to complete this four-part audit. Within the ALMR framework, the concept of disbelief is stripped of its standard emotional and religious connotations. The framework identifies disbelief as a synchronization error, a technical breakdown in the link between observation and logic. This is a failure of the human thinking center to connect with the eye observes, the Ra, with the logic that governs the system. It is a processing error where the user fails to map the manifest evidence of the physical world back to the source principles that generated them. The ALMR protocol presents truth as an unbroken and verifiable four-part chain. It originates in the source, transmits through the channel, manifests in the physical world, and is verified by the observer. This entire logical framework is compressed into the opening four-letter header, ALMR. This protocol demands a fiercely rational exploration of a universe where the source is made manifest for anyone who chooses to observe it. The universe's source code is entirely transparent, appearing in real time for those whose reasoning is synchronized enough to truly observe it.